streets with us to create the kind of political crisis that forces the removal of this regime from power, not waiting till 2020, not hoping that impeachment will handle it for us, but taking this responsibility ourselves. So I want to ask you, that's right, I want to ask you to gather in, because we are going to hear a speech right now that's going to give us some perspective on how we take this forward, on what we are doing and how we go forward. So I want to introduce to you a co-initiator of Refuse Fascism, a strategic leader and writer in this movement, a spokesperson for Revolution Books, which is up in Harlem. You should visit it if you haven't. And a very, very important and dear friend of my own, I am proud to give to you a member of our editorial board, Andy Z. Make some noise.
All right. So I want to thank the DJs for coming out and doing this. Back in the 1960s, there was a song. It was called Dancing in the Streets. Now it meant what it said, but it also meant something else. Think about it.
It doesn't matter what you wear, as long as you are here.
Okay.
That's even across the planet.
All right, we got some poets in the house. Now listen, not one more day. Not one more day should children be put in cages and separated from their parents for the basic human right of seeking asylum, which are the white supremacists who rule this country today, they see as a crime. 5 weeks ago, at this very park, we began with those words, not one more day, and too many days have already passed, and too many are still to come if we do not change the equation in this country and mobilize the one power that could drive this regime out, which is the power of the people, which all of you here today represent. And we have to do this, not just because of the anguish, not just because of the stifling of creativity of these children from being put in cages and separated from their parents, but because this shocks our conscience, and it is the height of immorality. But because this program of putting children in cages and shipping them across the country and putting their parents in concentration camps is only the opening shot, the battering ram for an entire fascist program of this regime. It is where this regime is leading the world, and it is because of its fascist essence that, yes, this regime will stifle and put an end to all the struggles for social justice and for progress, and it poses a catastrophic danger to humanity and to the planet. Catastrophe. Catastrophe. This is a word that came from the Greek in the 1500s, and it was applied to theater at that time, to drama. It applied to the end of a tragedy. Children in cages and wrapped in blankets. 5,400 since the beginning of this regime. 70,000 refugees in camps. Is this not a tragedy?
Yes.
It is. But it is just the beginning of a course of history that it is on us to stop. Climate change, white supremacy, xenophobia, the hatred of foreigners, endless wars, all of this, patriarchy, all of this is the program of this regime. And this is not going to be just a roving band of Mad Max maniacs running around. It is going to be a situation of a gated north against the people of the south, stretching across the southern border of the United States and southern Europe to keep out all those people that this system has destroyed their climates, destroyed their countries from coming north, and what they will be met with is walls and guns and concentration camps if we do not stop this. And let's be clear that these horrific tragedies of today that fuel the passion of this fascist regime and their rabid base and their supporters is being normalized through the ignorance and the complacency of all too many who know this is happening and yet go about their lives. And we have to be clear again that this is bringing catastrophe today. It's bringing tragedy today and catastrophe tomorrow, and that tomorrow could come soon. Some will say, and some will catcall, that this is a negative message. But you have not gathered here today to be negative. We have not gathered here to push a negative message. That's not what you're hearing in the music. We've come together to gather together today with hundreds and thousands across the country, and ultimately we need millions of people to sound the warning of what is actually coming down. We, all of us here today, are putting forth and we're modeling by being out here in the streets a positive message. We are bringing a message of hope. We are overcoming the fear of this great negative that is this fascist regime and changing our dread for the future into a force for hope for humanity. So say with me the following: in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. So 5 weeks ago, as I said, we began, and we have begun. But let's be clear, we have not won. And driving this regime from power is the only reason Refuse Fascism exists, and it is the reason that we launched OutNow. Anything less, I am not interested in, and neither should you be. We are not doing this to build our thing, our little enterprise of resistance, our purchase on that resistance, and especially so, this kind of thinking has to be gone from every movement of resistance as we unite together to drive this regime out, and especially so in a country like this. The reality is that the Trump-Pence regime they are not driven from power. Both the powerful forces who are behind them and the rabid fascist base that you have to confront, numbers in the millions of people, will be empowered and the world will be radically different. But you have not done that. You've gotten off your couch. We have to get to the other people and tell them that there is no savior coming to deliver them from what is affecting humanity right now. This is serious. It could be existential for the planet and for humanity, whether or not we are able to succeed. In The Handmaid's Tale, or rather in the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, she writes of a woman, that book is called The Testaments. She writes in that book of a woman suddenly arrested in Gilead, which is a successor to the United States when it becomes fascist. She writes, "Why did I think it would nonetheless be business as usual? Because we've been hearing these things for so long, I suppose. You don't believe the sky is falling until a chunk of it hits you. Are we going to wait till that time? No! There is only one way to stop what is unfolding, and that is people coming together and acting in a sustained way. That means continuing protest. Yes, we started when it was warm and it's cold today, and I'm sure we haven't seen the coldest of the winter yet. But what is coming is a different kind of winter, and it is going to be, as Gil Scott-Heron said many years ago, winter in America, should these fascists succeed. But we have begun. We've begun a mission, and here's the mission. It's very simple. There's a single demand. Trump, Pence, out now. Raise that sign up high. Trump, Pence, out now. That's the one demand that everybody should be able to unite on. Yes, those who believe deeply that this system can be reformed, those who believe deeply that in electing a Democrat, they will bring progress. But everybody has to see, and those who, like myself, think that you need an actual fundamental change in this system and a revolution to change things. All of us can unite around this one demand, Trump Pence out now, and the only way to do that, as I said, is through sustained protest. You know, we have to face some of the reality. There's not too many of us here today. Maybe 100 all told here. There's more up in Harlem. There's a few up in Midtown. There's hundreds around the country. That's not enough. But it really does matter that we've begun. You know, in 1942, a small group of students formed up in Germany. This was after Hitler came to power. It was 3 years after World War II began. And they were captured in 1943. But before they were executed, they said this. A young woman said this. Someday, somebody, after all, had to make a start. What we wrote and what we said is also believed by many others. They just don't dare to express themselves as we did. Well, with the 5-week launch of OutNow, we have made a start. And many today believe as we do that this regime is a nightmare. And it should be gone, and yet some don't dare to express themselves even today. But unlike those brave students in Germany who called themselves the White Rose, we are not yet in this country in full-blown fascism. Yet. But make no mistake, this country is on the road to fascism. And the more it gathers momentum, and the more people adjust to this great injustice, the higher the hurdle and the harder the fight will be. But it is not too late to build this movement. But as Bob Dylan once sang years ago when he was still Bob Dylan, let us not talk falsely now. The hour is getting late, and the wind is beginning to howl. And as I've said at every one of these rallies, quoting W.B. Yeats, the poet, World War II, World War I, Razzie, that the worst are full of passionate intensity, but the best lack all conviction. And before I get to how we're going to advance this movement, I do want you to get a sense of the scale and scope of this. We have our work really cut out for us. The time to do this is now. But let me say this. There is a fascist movement that is growing across this country. That's what you see in these campaign rallies. In the universities, they are coming to the universities. They are spreading through the universities. At UCLA last week, Refuse Fascism and OutNow mobilized 120 students to protest against this. That was a very positive thing, but there were 400 of these young fascists at the university, and there were more lined up outside. At Boston University, 200 people protested these fascists in this group called Turning Point. 200 protesters, but there were 1,200 inside to hear this more sophisticated fascist, Ben Shapiro. These are things we need to actually take into account. And at Berkeley next week, I believe it. And you have fascists right in the White House giving advice, people like Stephen Miller. These people are all over the country in state legislatures, in the courts, in our communities, in Breitbart, in Fox News. This is a serious fight we have. And you've got to get out there and struggle with your friends, your neighbors, people who aren't your friends and your neighbors, but who are people who live in your neighborhood. You've got to struggle with them about what the actual situation is. So let's be clear. And I'm going into this in some depth today. And the reason I'm doing that is because those of you who have braved the cold, those of you who have come out repeatedly, week after week, and those who have stumbled upon this day, need to know the reality, and you need to take that to your friends. Refuse Fascism has said that fascism rules by organized repression and terror, by the government. Civil liberties stripped away, laws rewritten, consent is criminalized. The courts are packed with fascists, and the separation of powers of church and state are taken away. And as part of radically remaking society, this regime has sharply attacked even those in positions of power who oppose them. You see this in the impeachment hearings. And fascism also mobilizes fascist mobs of vicious thugs from cities in Charlottesville, Virginia last 2 years ago. And we're seeing right now in mass murders of Jews in Pittsburgh,
of immigrants in El Paso. This is the reality, my friends, and this is what we must stop, and it's not going to be stopped by anybody. You out here are the answer to this, not by yourselves, but by yourselves rallying together with us to mobilize thousands of people and then millions of people to drive this movement out. And let's be clear on another thing. The Democratic Party leaders who won't even say the word fascist. Has Bernie said this? Has he uttered the word? No, he has not. And that's also why he said, in relationship to the border, well, there's a lot of desperate people in the world. You can't just open the border. He's telling you right there the interest that he has in mind, that it concerns him. And as for impeachment, Barry spoke to it earlier, but they want you to be spectators in the narrow concern that they are impeaching Trump on, which is national security and the legitimacy of their election. Yes, these are real issues from their perspective, and they're real issues in terms of combating fascism. But they are not impeaching him on the full fascist agenda, the full array of this, and thus far, by not doing that, they will be legitimating this agenda. And they will leave in place, should they somehow succeed in removing Trump, that Christian fascist heads in power and the whole regime still intact. But look, I want to return now to what we have accomplished. What have we done? Over the past 5 weeks, hundreds of people have demonstrated across the country every week in protest from a dozen people in small towns to hundreds in places like New York. We have taken actions that have been out in the media, that have spread the word of OutNow. To millions of people have seen this on television. This hashtag OutNow, wherever there's a sign. What have we accomplished? We put our demand before people. We put this concept before people that people have to get out in the street in a continued way. We've modeled a way to do this week after week. And there are many social forces looking at what we are doing and measuring what they are doing in relationship to OutNow. And many can and should be a part of this. Everybody here should go out to any organizations you know and say there is room for you in these protests. Come with your demands, come with your signs, but come. But what remains to be done is we have to work together with all of you and thousands of others to solve what is a very big problem that no one has solved as yet. How to move hundreds and thousands into the streets in sustained protest, as is being done in other countries, as you were chanting before, as we've learned from Puerto Rico, from Hong Kong, from Chile, and Lebanon. So here, to conclude this, we do have a proposal from Refuse Fascism on how to go forward. No, this isn't going to be the last cold Saturday we're out here. But we are saying that next Sunday, the 24th of November, Refuse Fascism is calling for mass meetings around the country to discuss OutNow, to make plans for how do we get those thousands. We want to hear from you what your ideas on that, how you see solving this problem. This is not something that just we can solve. And let's be clear, there's other marches that sometimes involve 100 or 200 people in response to this or that outrage. But nobody yet has solved the problem in this country of how to bring out the kind of struggle that we've seen around the world. Should we not do that, as I said, it will be catastrophic for humanity. So that is what we're going to be getting into in these meetings. In these meetings, we're going to make some plans and figure out how do we go forward from here and continue to sustain protests of different kinds in different places, but also every place. So for the first, after the 24th, next Sunday comes Thanksgiving. Well, they have a big part of that holiday, which is shop, shop, shop till you drop on Black Friday. So we're having a little contest. Who can come up with the most creative way to go up against that with the message that Trump Pence must go now? All right? So you can send your ideas and you can come to the meeting. We'll work out some plans and we'll hit the streets on Friday or Saturday. So look, we're going to wrap this up here. This is some serious stuff. We're going to have another DJ. We can do some more dancing in the streets before we march to Trump Tower. In 2018, we issued a call. And I want you to join me in this pledge that I've slightly changed for today. Let it not be said that we did not move heaven and earth to drive out this regime. And let us stand together with conviction and courage, overcoming fear and uncertainty, to resist and say, Trump Pence out now. Not just for ourselves, but in the name of humanity. And again, in the name of humanity. We refuse to accept a fascist America. Trump Pence out now. Trump Pence out now.